Hello, and welcome to Cybersecurity Today. I'm Jim Wiggins, your host, here to guide you through the complexities of the cybersecurity landscape. If you're new to our program, allow me to offer you a brief introduction. This program delves into the intricate and sometimes complex world of cybersecurity, aiming to deliver insightful and engaging discussions on a wide range of computer security topics. In our 30-minute episodes, structured like a talk show or a news broadcast, we cover a broad array of themes, issues, and the latest advancements in cybersecurity. Designed to cater to both newcomers and seasoned professionals, the show provides critical insights and expert perspectives on emerging trends within the cybersecurity landscape. Our mission is to serve a diverse audience, ensuring that whether you're a novice or a veteran, today's episode will be both informative and engaging. Now, our program is typically divided into two distinct segments. The first segment, we call this Cyber Bites, and it concentrates on current issues and trends that are actively influencing the cybersecurity industry. Then in our second segment, we're pleased to welcome Mr. Jermaine Stanley, who will share his insights on the topic DEI challenges and solutions in the cybersecurity industry. All right, let's delve into the Cyber Bites section and uncover the most recent developments in the cybersecurity world. In current news, Google has warned that Iranian hackers from the group APT42 have been attempting to infiltrate the email accounts of individuals associated with the U.S. presidential campaigns of Vice President Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. The hackers successfully compromised the personal Gmail accounts of a high-profile political consultant and continue to target other campaign officials. Microsoft and Mandiant have also reported similar activities linking the group to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps intelligence organization. Despite denials from the Iranian government, the FBI is investigating these ongoing cyber espionage efforts. French authorities reported over 140 cyber attacks during the recent Paris Olympics, with no disruptions to the competitions. The National Cybersecurity Agency, ANSSI, recorded 119 low-impact security events and 22 incidents involving successful system breaches. Despite the attacks, ANSSI emphasized their low impact with notable incidents, including a ransomware attack on the Grand Palais and other museums. ANSSI's team, supported by the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, worked tirelessly to protect critical infrastructure throughout the games. In other news, following the July 19th CrowdStrike outage that caused widespread blue screens of death issues, Germany's Federal Office for Information Security is advocating for significant changes in how Microsoft and CrowdStrike products access the Windows kernel. The agency's response aims to reduce the risk of similar incidents by limiting kernel access for cybersecurity tools. This move could lead to substantial changes in the design and operation of cybersecurity products, ultimately enhancing the security and stability of critical systems. That wraps up today's headlines. We'll take a short break and return with our guest, Mr. Jermaine Stanley, to discuss DEI challenges and solutions in the cybersecurity industry. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after the break.
With liberty and justice for all. Does that mean bunnies and puppies?
Every year, thousands of companion animals and billions of factory farm and lab animals are legally abused and killed. But this can be stopped. Tell Congress to support sensible, humane laws. Sign the Animal Bill of Rights now.
Don't forget the puppies.
Welcome back to Cybersecurity Today. Joining us now is Mr. Jermaine Stanley, an accomplished cybersecurity and IT leader with over 25 years of experience across various industries, including financial services, technology, and government. Mr. Stanley is renowned for his expertise in cybersecurity, IT audit, and risk advisory, as well as his leadership in diversity, equity, and inclusion DEI initiatives. He currently serves as the past president of the ISACA Greater Washington, D.C. chapter and is the founder of Stanley Consulting Group. Today, Mr. Stanley will discuss DEI challenges and solutions in the cybersecurity industry, providing his expert insights into the importance of fostering a diverse, equitable, and inclusive culture within the cybersecurity field. Jermaine, welcome to the show.
Jim, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. We're super excited to have you here. I thought maybe what we could do is actually, a lot of people have probably heard the term DEI, but could we start with having you kind of define what DEI represents, and then we'll kind of move into how it fits within the context of cyber?
Absolutely. So DEI, as we know, diversity, equity, and inclusion, it covers all industries, no matter where you are. Diversity, equity, and inclusion goes back to the early days of affirmative action, which, if you recall, was sort of put in place to level the playing field. But diversity, from the standpoint of diverse, is just by the nature, it's inherent in any organization, no matter if you're public or private, nonprofit, those types of things, just different perspectives, where people grew up, what they've experienced, they're all different. That's the diversity. The equity is, as we know, equal, trying to give people similar or same resources to succeed within an organization. The inclusion part is where folks feel like they belong, right? If my voice is heard, I'm being recognized for my contributions, I feel like I belong, and I'm more inclined to stay. But in the broader scheme of things, DEI is a set of different principles, different processes, different initiatives that an organization can undertake to build or sustain a very inclusive, a more inclusive environment.
Understood. Can we now kind of maybe bring in cyber in terms of the industry? What is its role within cybersecurity? Why is it important?
Yeah. So as we know, cybersecurity, in any information security, any technology, there is a lot of what we call underrepresentation, whether it's gender-based, men versus women, whether it's race-based, whether it's different, things like if you're neurodivergent or if you come from, say, the LGBTQ+ community. So a lot of those things factor in to any organization, as I said before, but from a cybersecurity perspective, technology perspective, there are some room, to improve. There's room to improve. So with regards to DEI initiatives helping in this space, it helps bridge that gap, so to speak, Jim, that we spoke about previously. We've had several conversations offline about this, but from a very short, view on this, it's how do you institute or implement these different practices, as I indicated earlier, that will help bridge the gap when it comes to having more folks who are considered underrepresented or marginalized working not only in the field, but also being considered what we call leaders in the field. Understood.
What's your assessment of where cyber is when it comes to DEI? Can you talk about that underrepresentation? Yeah, absolutely. So this is not rocket science. This is nothing new, nothing earth-shattering. We know that there's a gap when it comes to gender, pay, equity, whether it's men, women, that kind of thing. So when it comes to women, we know that historically women are underpaid. That's one thing. The other part of that is there's a greater percentage of men who are considered leaders, okay, within a specific organization that focuses on cybersecurity or some kind of technology, right? So that as far as that is concerned, the state of when we say cybersecurity, DEI, that kind of thing, the biggest thing I see is the gender gap. And that is still very, very relevant. And it was really brought to the forefront during the years of COVID, right?
because we saw that a lot of the women had to stay home, whereas the men went out and worked because they had no sitters, they had no care because we were all locked down. So again, that's just another layer to that aspect of gender equity.
Understood.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of actions can be taken to try to close that gap? And any thoughts on actions that the cybersecurity industry could undertake to try to help alleviate some of those concerns?
Yeah, so when I hear that question, I do hear that question in various forms. It goes back to, one, the tone at the top with regards to an organization. The leadership has to buy into the fact that if we have a more diverse and inclusive workforce or environment, we're going to have happier people. Our bottom line is going to be better. Those types of things. So you got to have that buy-in, right, from the top. The other part is sponsorship programs with regards to not only saying, hey, we want to help this particular individual, but we want to sponsor them, take them into rooms, take their names into rooms that they don't necessarily have access to, right? Leverage your HR organization's initiatives around inclusive work cultures. So think of the employee inclusion groups or employee resource groups. Those are grassroots groups that allow organizations to allow their people to voice their concerns or voice their opinions or show, hey, let's bring some awareness to the things that we do well, right? So those grassroots organizations kind of help. So those are the main three things I would think that organizations can, the leadership that is, can undertake to help with that issue.
So what's caused, when we think about this issue, it seems to me that there are some barriers there. And I'm wondering, like, from a root cause perspective, how would you articulate that what those barriers are and why they're there? Any thoughts on that? Yeah,
so historically, right? Historically speaking, technology was a small group of people. If we go back to the early years of technology, a lot of folks didn't look like myself. I'll be very, very honest about that. And there weren't a lot of women who were considered pioneers back in those early days, when the Microsofts of the world joined, when IBM was there, when Apple was, joining the ranks. So historically, we've been battling that. And yes, we have gotten better throughout the year, more so because of certain laws that have been passed, certain behaviors that have changed within, say, organizational structures. What we do know that there's a lot of studies. You can go talk to McKinsey, you can go talk to Deloitte's of the world, what we call Harvard Business Reviews of the world, and you'll show that, and this is in the case of women, that women leaders tend to have what we consider more stable organizations, cultures, and they are high performers. So there's a lot of data out there on that. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
Interesting. Yeah. Let's talk about education. What role does education play in kind of supporting DEI initiatives or trying to level the playing field? Can you speak to that for a minute?
Well, from an education perspective, right? The more you can tap into underserved populations, and I'll speak on this a little bit. There's an organization called the National Cybersecurity Alliance, and they have what they call the HBCU See Yourself in Career, Cybersecurity Career Program, where they go around the country and they talk to the students about the day in the life of working in cybersecurity. Myself have had a chance to take a few of these tours over the last couple of years. And what you see there is, okay, there are people out there that really want to jump into this. And from an education perspective, it doesn't matter really what you're studying, right? But what does matter is that you're curious, you want to make a difference, and you want to jump into this world. And what we try to communicate is that there are a lot of opportunities out there. You don't necessarily have to be the techie person to get into cyber. You can be marketing, you can be an attorney and work for these companies. You can work in sales and you're still considered working in cyber. When it comes to education, that's an interesting one. Maybe 10 years ago, I would say, yes, make sure you get that 4-year education and things like that. But we know that most companies who are very tech savvy are hiring people who are not a 4-year degree. They may have a certification and they may have some practical experience and maybe then go back to school.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know in today's world if the education part, meaning your typical freshman through senior, then grad school, is necessarily required, but educating yourself on the different aspects of what it is to be in cybersecurity, what it means to be a threat analyst, what it means to be someone who scans networks and things of that nature, right? So educating yourself on these various things. And how do you do that? There are a lot of organizations, as you know, that ISACA is one that has certifications.
Sure.
That you can that will make you more employable when you come out.
Understood. Let's talk for a moment now about leadership. It seems like organizations themselves have a role in this, and I'm wondering, what role does leadership play in each of these organizations? Is there a tie-in there or a connection point that we can talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. And I did touch on it a little bit, the tone at the top.
Yeah.
Right. So, being parents, I'm a parent, right? And those who are out there who are parents, they understand this. Your kids are always watching you. So if you're a leader of an organization, not necessarily saying they're your kids, but they're watching every move that leaders are making, right? So if they see, hey, the leader of our company or the leader of our organization is bought into this, that's the first step, right? And that's very, very important, because without it, it just falls upon deaf ears, right? The other part leadership plays in that is they are the ones that can be the biggest cheerleaders, right? And that trickles down into the workforce, through your company. So leadership is very important in this whole conversation, right? Because if you are bought in and you're cheerleading about it, you're going to put the resources behind it to support it, right? So now your HR organization has the tools. They have the resources to go out and establish a program, so to speak, right, around this, or develop initiatives that support this. Yeah.
Understood. Okay, so we've talked about tone. We've talked about leadership's role. So a leader comes to you and says, Jermaine, I'm interested in promoting more DEI in our organization, specifically as it relates to cybersecurity. What are the critical components that you would articulate to that leader that are super successful for a successful DEI-based program that will help start to push these initiatives?
Yeah, absolutely. So we know many companies have thrown a lot of money at this whole thing since the early days of COVID. But there are some key components there, right? You got to have a game plan or a roadmap of what you want to do, right? So one of the first things I say to folks to help, when I say folks, leaders, to help them manage their expectations, is you're talking about a culture shift, change, organizational change per se. We know that, you and I know, that takes time. So expecting something to change in 1 year, probably not highly likely. I say to folks that I talk to, these different leaders, 3 to 5 years. 5 years for sure, you'll start to see the changes that you've implemented, say, 5 years previous, right? Because it just takes time to sink in. Because we know with organizational change, you're going to have folks who are the early adopters. You're going to have folks who are going to kind of be like, I'm out of here. This is not for me. And then you're going to have those who are just going to wait to see how it plays out. So that's just typical with regards to organizational change. So when it comes to implementing these things, you got to have that roadmap. Secondly, you got to have someone who has the vision in regards to running your initiatives. So if that's your chief people officer who hires someone to be the DEI leader, who has the wherewithal to do that, then bring them in, but also empower them so that they're not hamstrung. I've heard so many stories, Jim, where you hire someone to be the DEI leader and they don't have a budget. I was talking to someone recently, a Fortune 500 company, a utility company in the Midwest. And they said, okay, they gave us a budget of say $50,000 or something like that. Okay. After they hired someone to come in and tell them, here are your gaps in regards to your programming. So that's we know $50,000, you can burn through that pretty quickly.
Sure.
Yeah, right. So there's, again, a lack of commitment from leadership, right? So that's the first thing. So you got to make sure you empower the people who are going to do the work. Implement those grassroots organizational things that I mentioned, the employee inclusion groups, the employee resource groups, right? Tie into those, because that way you have employees who feel empowered to share who they are, to be their authentic selves, right? So I look at those three main things at a very, very high level. I can go deeper, but I know we only have so much time.
Sure.
But yeah, I would think of those three things be the most important.
So we've talked about a roadmap. We've talked about some specific initiatives that organizations might promote or develop. What kind of metrics should an organization look at tracking to ultimately try to measure effectiveness of successful DEI programs within cyber? Any thoughts?
Yeah. So from a cyber security perspective, I would think that if you're an organization, you want to look at how many people who consider themselves underrepresented or other, right, that you have as far as your percentage of leaders. That's one. How many folks are you retaining, right, because of this? How many people identify in a certain way? You have to be kind of careful with it because there's different laws in different states, but then you go overseas, there's even stricter laws in regards to those types of demographics. But the most important ones, I think, is the one where you look at your percentage of leaders, right? You got this big organization. How many of these leaders are considered from these various underrepresented groups? The reason why I say that is, if you think about it, as I said earlier, the diversity with regards to the being considered inherent to an organization, you're going to have that. So you got to be able to speak and appeal to those various angles, those various facets of your organization. So that's very, very important, Jim.
I think one of the areas that I just want to spend a couple of minutes on, if we could, is this idea of unconscious bias that ultimately exists a lot in society.
Right.
Any thoughts on how organizations can try to overcome that unconscious bias, especially when we think about it within the cybersecurity realm?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple things I want to touch on there. The principle or the unconscious bias, right? We all have it. We all have biases. It's just how our brains are wired. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, Jim, because that's what saved us throughout all these years of evolution.
Sure. Yeah,
right? But when you think about technology, let's look at it from the angle of technology and inclusive practices around technology. Companies being aware of the fact that their products and services from a technological standpoint has to serve many various points of view, not just a narrow set. So bringing in folks to test your products or test your services to make sure that they are feeling included in it, right? So a great example is someone whose sight is impaired, right? We've seen it on the cell phones where you can increase the font size, you can increase the image. So you can't do that unless you test it out. So that's just a very basic way to bring in inclusive practices when we talk about this, right? So I would think that companies have to make sure that they're taking a step back to ensure that, especially if they're selling products, technology products, that they're including those folks that they're serving, right? Because one market might be different than another market. Another country might be different than another country.
Sure.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Understood. We're running low on time. Just a couple questions left for you. One of them I want to ask you about is specifically, so we build a program, we're promoting it. How do we make sure we retain the people, right? It seems to me, especially in IT and cyber, there's all this competitive forces at play trying to pull people between organizations. Right. Any thoughts on how organizations can ensure that once they've got that diversity that they're trying to culminate, that they don't get pulled by other companies and go elsewhere?
Right. So it's very important to be transparent. Transparent leadership is the way to go. Make sure folks understand this is how we're doing. Share the numbers. Be public about it, right? Also, continue to invest in those grassroots programs that I mentioned. Make sure that you have the certain sponsorship programs in place to promote from within, because you're going to keep people there. And I said this earlier, if you feel like you belong, you're going to be more inclined to stay, right? So conversely, if you're trying to attract someone from the outside, Jim, they're looking at how you are, they're very savvy these days. How's this particular company handling diversity, equity, inclusion, or just inclusive environments? How are they doing this? And if the word on the street is saying they're not doing it too well, they're not going to come work for you. But the companies who do it well, at the very top of these various indices that you see every year, they got that down. But guess what? That took some time. So going back to what I said earlier, you have to let that work for a while before you have some success there.
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood. Last question for you. I know you're working on participating in publication of a book.
Yes.
I'd like to just have you quickly tell me a little bit about that, and then specifically how our viewers can reach out to you or learn more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So coming sometime late September, early October, The World's Greatest Speakers, Volume 2, or The Stories from the World's Greatest Speakers, Volume 2. Yours truly is one of 12 authors. I have a chapter. And it's just various stories about leadership. It's a leadership book. It's meant to inspire those who are aspiring to be leaders. And in particular, I talk a little bit about perseverance. I talk a little bit about being what it means to be a good leader. There's a section in there called Scorched Earth. So that's a good read there as well. So that should be coming out on ebook, and I believe we're going to sell it on Amazon first. And the print book should come out sometime in October, early November. And for those who want to reach me, you can go to stanleyconsults.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find our company on LinkedIn. You can DM me directly if you have questions. I'm on Twitter, formerly known as, or now known as X, and the other platforms as well. And I'm always a phone call away, Jim.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming in. We really appreciate you spending time with us.
Thank you so much, Jim.
That concludes today's episode. We extend our sincere thanks to our guest, Mr. Jermaine Stanley, for joining us and sharing his insights on the critical challenges and solutions related to DEI in the cybersecurity industry. We hope today's program has been both enlightening and thought-provoking, offering new perspectives on important cybersecurity issues. For more information about Cybersecurity Today and to stay up to date on upcoming episodes, please visit our website at www.cybersecuritytoday.org. Additionally, you can scan the QR code displayed at the bottom of your screen for quick and easy access to the show's website. Finally, we welcome your questions or comments via email at contactus@cybersecuritytoday.org. Feel free to reach out to us. We look forward to seeing you at our next broadcast. Thanks a lot for joining us. Stay safe, stay informed.